Hello everybody. So I kind of get the feeling that Capone is going to end up recruiting the Germ pirates into his own crew. And I happen to think that the payoff for this cover story is going to be twofold. I think it's going to be finding Lola, but then it's also going to be about finding out more about that race that King belongs to. That I happen to think that that spiky hair guy, the giant spiky hair dude, also belongs to. Because look, ultimately, the payoff of this cover story has to be connected to the end game at some point. We're too far in for it not to be. We start off with a courtship scene between Toki and Odin learning that the world is round. And Toki says that she doesn't remember where she was born, but that both her parents were from Wano. And so because we know that Toki's last name when she was single was Amatsuki, and we find out in this chapter that Amatsuki is actually one of the names of the 5 daimyo clans, then that obviously means that Toki's parents belong to the Amatsuki clan, and their responsibility was to work and serve under the Shogun of the Kozuki clan. So there's a line in the first page where she says that, you know, it doesn't really matter if we go to Wano or not because I feel like when I'm with you, I've already found my destination. So that could be like a reference to the fact that her whole family, the purpose of her whole family was to serve under the Kozuki clan or to help out the Kozuki clan. So as long as she's with Odin, she kind of feels like fulfilled in that sense. Something that needs to happen very soon in this flashback is that we need to find out who knows what about the poneglyphs. I mean, we know that the knowledge of reading and crafting the poneglyphs belongs to the Kozuki clan because they were the ones who crafted them in the first place. So Odin must know how to read and write them. But at the same time, because Toki is from such an ancient clan as well, I'm curious about whether she knows how to read and craft them. Plus, another thing that needs to happen in this flashback is that we need to go to Skypiea with Roger, and either Toki or Odin has to write this message to create the gold poneglyph. Because even though Roger has the voice of all things and he's able to decipher the poneglyphs with that ability, there's no way he would have been able to write this message by himself. So either Odin or Toki or both must have helped him write this message in Skypiea. And so Marco is eavesdropping on Odin and Toki's conversation, and he's blushing, and then we find out that Jozu and Vista are also blushing. And I like how the cat was just about to go in there. He was gonna third wheel that conversation hard. Like imagine if he had actually gone up to them. It would have been so awkward to have like a 7-minute scene of the cat standing in between Toki and Odin, staring out into the distance. And be like, hey, how's it going, you two? Nice weather we have today. The Marines are chasing the Moby Dick, and Odin suggests that Whitebeard should fight them. And Whitebeard says no, because if we do, then they'll just keep showing up, which is kind of cool in the sense that, like, by the end of his life, he does end up defying them and fighting them in their home turf. He goes to Marineford, so it's kind of like, you know, something that he wasn't very interested in doing, he ended up doing. Like, by the end of his life, he just decided to throw caution to the wind, and he did that all for family, so I thought that was a nice touch. Then we get a time jump to 28 years ago before the current storyline, and Momonosuke is born. So it just shows, like, how much of a quick pace Oda is applying to this flashback. Like, just gotta bring it home. We also find out that Odin has a bounty on his head now, and we don't get to find out how much he's worth, unfortunately. Then we get that talk with Whitebeard about him wanting to split up the crew into divisions and create the division commanders. He says he wants to split it into 5, which is interesting because by the end, he ends up with 16 divisions. We get that panel with Odin's cringe reaction phase when Whitebeard tells him that he should be the head of the 2nd division, which of course we know that eventually Ace becomes the head of the 2nd division. Now, if you look at the setting of that panel with the Whitebeard pirates, you'll notice the mushrooms in the background. And so what happens here is that Oda is essentially making an island that wasn't initially canon because it appears in this chapter. The island of mushrooms, which is called Kinoko Island, only appears in the Foxy special. It's called Adventure of Nebulandia. If you've seen that special, you know what I'm talking about. So I guess now that island is officially canon. I mean, technically Greenbit, which is the island that's near Dressrosa, also had giant mushrooms, but they weren't as prominent there. We finally get Blackbeard in this, you know, little Teach there, and he's an orphan. And I'm trying to figure out what town they pick him up from. Like is that an island that we've seen before? If you know which one it is, please let me know, because I couldn't identify it. Now, when it was mentioned that he was an orphan, my first thought automatically went to Zebek, and so I thought, Is he an orphan because Zebek was killed in the Battle of God's Valley? Like, is he tearing up because he misses his father and was forced to grow up in poverty, and so now he secretly swore vengeance to try and avenge his father and try to take down the people that ruined his dad's career? And speaking of young Blackbeard, the only panel we've ever gotten of him when he was a kid prior to this chapter is this one. That's it. This is the only drawing that Oda has done of Teach before this chapter as a kid. Notice how Oda decided to include the moon in the drawing. Like, it just sounds like a broken record at this point, but the moon will be super important for the future of the series. Also, in an SBS, Oda stated that if Teach was not a pirate, then he would be an archaeologist. And that he also said that Teach has a hobby of studying history. So, archaeology, history, moon, void century. Again, the connections are very, very clear. So I really want to find out how much Teach knows about stuff at this point. There's like a panel of Odin running wild on an island that says, "I can't control my adventurous spirit anymore." It's like, gee, who does that remind me of? I remember at one point Oda got a question from a fan in an SBS that said something along the lines of, "Oda, will the Straw Hats ever fall in love?" And Oda replied something like, "Yes, in fact, they're already in love. They're in love with adventure," which is exactly the formula that Oda applies in this chapter, because he skips the romantic aspect of Odin and Toki's relationship, and then Toki starts popping out kids while Odin runs wild. We shift back to Wano and we find out how Orochi came to power, how he became the shogun. And in order for these shenanigans to be explained, we get a flashback within a flashback. Apparently there was this old lady, and I happen to think that this character, whoever this character is going to turn out to be super important. So just bear with me. The first thing that stood out to me is that she has a very specific worldview. She tells Orochi that the people with power are the ones who ultimately decide what's right and what's wrong. What was once considered a crime can be redefined as something noble. So that just gave me Doflamingo vibes. You know how Doflamingo has a speech in Marineford where he says that who's righteous and who isn't depends on who's on top. Because if you're on top, you can rewrite history to your advantage. That's Doflamingo's speech in Marineford. You can read it there. Now remember that Doflamingo used to be a noble. Like, he used to live in Marijoa. So it's kind of like, where did he pick up this line of thinking? Plus, this lady said that she's been abroad. Like, she's been, you know, outside of Wano before. She talks about the 5 clans, the daimyos, and again with the moon references. All of those names, except for Kurosumi, have the word moon in them. Of course, Shimotsuki is one of the names of the clans that the lady throws out there. So if Zoro is in fact related to Shimotsuki Ushimaru, then that would make Zoro a descendant of one of the first, you know, the ancient clans of Wano. And since Lady Toki's last name is Amatsuki, and that clan goes back all the way to the Void Century, then if Zoro happens to be related or connected to the Shimotsuki clan, then that would make Zoro's lineage way more important than we initially thought, because you could trace his lineage all the way back to the Void Century as well, just like Lady Toki. So it'll just depend, and it'll come down to whether or not Zoro is related to Shimotsuki Ushimaru. I feel like sooner or later we're going to find out that the Kozuki clan, the Shimotsuki clan, the Amatsuki clan, and all those clans were affiliated in some way with the D clan. So if Zoro happens to be a Shimotsuki, it'll be like, oh, like Luffy and Zoro were destined to be friends because of the lineage. But that's the thing, like, I'm actually okay with Zoro just being Zoro. I think that adds more weight and more value to the fact that he's just a badass. Because I feel like it would send the message that you don't need to have special heritage, right, to be special. But even then, like, if Zoro were to find out that he's a Shimotsuki, he'd probably just shrug it off. Just be like, whatever. Now, the old lady says that Orochi's father was forced to commit seppuku because it was found out that he was actually trying to poison the other daimyo because he wanted to become shogun. That plan failed. It left Orochi's family in ruin, and there was a proper heir that was born, which was Odin's dad, Sukiyaki. So, yeah, that's how it just got resolved. But the whole point is, like, to plant the seed of vengeance in Orochi. Orochi eats the whole thing up, and the old lady reveals that she has the power of the Mane Mane Devil Fruit, which is the exact same devil fruit that Bon Clay has. So if Bon Clay has this devil fruit, then that means that this lady currently is probably dead, because the way that devil fruits get reborn is if the user that has the power dies, the fruit gets reborn. So this lady is probably dead, but just because she's dead doesn't mean that she's not important. She gives Orochi his devil fruit, the Hebi no Mi Yamata no Orochimaru, which allows Orochi to become this 8-headed serpent. But here's the thing. If you look at that fruit, every time we've seen a devil fruit, the devil fruit has a spiral pattern on it. Every single time. It's part of the composition, part of the texture of the fruit. That fruit there is the only fruit, aside from the smileys, which are, fake devil fruits, but that's the only devil fruit that we've seen thus far that doesn't have spirals on it. Why is that? I mean, that whole scene is super sketchy to begin with, but just the fact that it doesn't have like the proper spirals, just made it even more sketchy. And then she refuses to reveal her identity. So who is this character? Who is this person? Because she says that she's been outside of Wano. She has access to devil fruits, or at least, she gave Orochi that one. She has a similar worldview as Doflamingo, who used to be a noble. And here's another thing. One of the people that she transforms into is Shiki. I mean, you can tell that's Shiki's face because of the eyebrows, right? So the very distinctive eyebrows. Now, here's the thing. The way that the Mane Mane no Mi power works is that the user can only transform into people that they have touched. So if this lady was close enough, to Shiki that, they must have had physical contact, right? Then does that mean that she was hanging around rocks at some point? Was she part of the rocks pirates herself? It's just very clear that this is a very important character. And once we get the revelation of who she actually is, it'll be shocking. I'm guessing that it's somebody that we've at least heard of, if not know. Also, I wouldn't be surprised if whoever the traitor is in the present happens to be connected to this character in some way, shape, or form. She tells Orochi to start manufacturing weapons, which I'm pretty sure that's going to lead into the connection between Orochi and Kaido. And then she also tells him to start collecting gold, and so this is why he begins to manipulate people into feeling sorry for him. I don't know if you remember this, but I did say this during the review of that chapter. When Odin leaves Hakumai, and one of the assistants of Yasui says oh no, Odin left and he took the gold. It was actually Orochi who took it. But if you remember, the assistant was complaining that the room that Odin was in was completely trashed. And so what I said back then was that it wasn't Odin who trashed the room. It was actually Orochi with his devil fruit power that destroyed the room. And so eventually the old lady transforms into Odin himself to get Orochi a job inside of the castle. And then afterwards, she transforms into Sukiyaki Kozuki. Now, unfortunately, I'm also guessing that by the time that the impersonation of Sukiyaki took place, by the time that she started impersonating Odin's father, Sukiyaki was actually already dead at this point. And then, of course, due to the fact that the news of Wano doesn't travel to the outside world, there's no way that Odin could know that his father had passed. We go back to Whitebeard and Odin, and I like how there's so much hype emanating from that one island that it's causing the fish and animals to rush out of there. The animals from that panel actually reminded me of the animals that Luffy fought during the 2-year time skip, but it can't be the same island because if you look at the panel where Odin is pointing at it, the island has apparently giant palm trees, and Rusukaina, which is the island that Luffy trained in, looks like this. So it just doesn't fit the picture. We also see that Toki has given birth to Hiyori now, so she's with them as well. And then there's a panel of Marco with his devil fruit power. And I actually read a comment that said that you could actually see Marco using his devil fruit power in the previous chapter, 964. It's actually true. So in the section where you see Odin going to different islands, there's a couple of panels, one where he gets frozen and one where he just bursts into flames in the desert. In that desert panel, you can clearly see Marco using his phoenix wings to fly. I mean, he shows up very tiny in that panel, but you can definitely tell that those are his wings. So yeah, I mean, this was confirmed back in the previous chapter, 964. So good catch. That was an excellent catch to those who got it, who read the chapter. And so we find out who's been causing the animals to stampede out of there, and it's the Roger pirates. And if you look at that panel where we see all of them, there's a marine ship that's been wrecked. And you can tell it's a marine ship because if you look at the bottom, it has those little lines that marine ships have. So the Roger pirates totally tore that marine vessel up. And there's this one panel that I love where he's telling that marine guy, next time send somebody like Garp or Sengoku to get me. Because if you don't, you'll insult my strength. And then in that one panel where we see the crew, you can see bats or birds trying to evacuate the island as well. We see Buggy and Shanks there, and obviously they look a little bit older than the last time we saw them in the previous chapter. But what I thought was interesting is that Shanks is eating a chocolate bar. And so when I first saw him eating the chocolate, I was like, wait, Did you guys just come from Whole Cake Island? Shanks back in the day looks a little bit like Sabo. And then Rayleigh's just there being a badass. And also, we can find out that Roger had a fishman in his crew, which I don't think we knew about until this chapter. Now, by showing that Scopper Gavin is already part of Roger's crew, it pretty much debunks the fan theory that Denjiro could be Scopper. I pretty much ruled that theory out from the very beginning, just because if you look at their design, like Scopper's ponytail, the hair stemming from his ponytail is very spiky. Like it's kind of has that little poof to it, whereas Denjiro's ponytail is really straight and smooth. So also just based on design, Scopper has a much bigger jaw than Denjiro does. Plus, in one of those panels where we've seen Scopper in the past, he's using an axe to fight, whereas obviously Denjiro uses a katana. So to me, it was really obvious that the two couldn't be the same person, but this chapter pretty much confirms that. We also get to see Crocus as a part of Roger's crew, and the way that I think about Crocus is that if you see him as part of the Roger Pirates, if he's already part of the crew, then that means that Roger's already sick. Because the whole reason for why they recruited Crocus in the first place was because he was the only known doctor that could apparently manage the illness that Roger had. So I really want to find out what kind of illness Roger had and how he got it. Because something about it just kind of gets me to think that maybe Emu had something to do with giving Roger the illness, or the world government was involved with it. And the chapter ends with Roger implying that he's going to go and pick a fight with Whitebeard, which I'm pretty sure what we're going to get. Like if we get, you know, a clash, is that we're going to get like that, you know, the Yonko clash that we've gotten with Shanks versus Whitebeard, Big Mom versus Kaido, and then like Odin versus Whitebeard. That's the most recent one. I feel like we're going to get that with Roger and Whitebeard. Then again, we still don't know how Whitebeard got his scars that we see on his chest, so maybe Roger was the one who gave him those scars, and we might see that happen. We do know that eventually Odin leaves Whitebeard to go on Roger's ship, so maybe this is the island where the exchange takes place after the fight. Now, if Odin actually joins Roger next week, and that's as far as we go with Whitebeard, then I just have to say that I find it super strange that in all the time that we spent with Whitebeard during this flashback, we never got to see Thatch. But then again, maybe Oda is saving Thatch for Blackbeard's story, and we'll find out more about how Thatch joined during Blackbeard's flashback when we get to him. And then finally, we do know that at one point, Crocodile in the New World eventually tries to fight Whitebeard and gets utterly defeated. He gets crushed by Whitebeard. But I don't know if we're going to see that in this flashback. Probably not, because that happens way later. So right now, it would just be way too early. But, you know, I just thought I'd mention that. Overall, I thought the chapter was really good. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you did. Subscribe to my channel, please, if you haven't done so already. And click here if you want to know more about why I think Demon Slayer is brilliant. Join me next week for the clash between the future King of the Pirates and then the future strongest man alive. Does Whitebeard have his devil fruit right now? Like, has that been confirmed already? I don't know. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.